Hello everyone and welcome to another Maths Cure video. Sorry it's been a while, I've been busy. So what I'm going to start looking at now is some A-level maths videos. So we'll be going through the Edexcel topics and we're starting at the start of the book and going through them. So today we're going to look at chapter 1 and then we'll look at lesson 1 in it. So that is called index laws. So let's have a look at some index laws then. So first of all, what is an index? So what you can have is you have, let's say x, we can just represent any number, and you have it to the power of something. So let's say x to the power of 5. So these two thick parts have special names. So the x, so the number, this is a special name. It is called the base. So let me just, it's called the base. And then the power has a special name as well, and that is called the index. So it's also called the power or the exponent, but one of its names is the index, and that's why we call them index laws. So what we're going to learn in this lesson is laws that you can do with indices, and these should already be pretty familiar to you. So it's like GCSE topic, but you need to know it, so it's good to review it. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So there are 4 different laws that you need to know about right now. Okay, so we're going to go over 4 laws in this lesson, maybe a few more. So first of all, we've got x to the power of m. So these are all just representing numbers, by the way. And then we've got times that by x to the power of n. So what happens is when you're timesing 2 numbers together and then you have the 2 powers, what you do is you add the powers. So what we're going to get is x to the power of m plus n. So that is law 1. Okay, what about law 2? So let's have a look at this. So it's x to the power of m divided by x to the power of n. And if you think about it, timesing is opposite of dividing. So instead of plussing here, we're going to minus. So what we're going to do is get x to the power of m minus n. So before we move any further and look at some other rules, we will look at a few examples. So let's try some questions. So let's say we've got a to the power of 2 times a to the power of 8. So all you do is you get a to the power of 2 plus 8. So you just add them together. And 2 plus 8 we know is 10. So the answer is a to the power of 10. So this is a very important skill that you need to be able to do. Like, it comes up in so many areas of maths, so it's very important that you know how to do this. Okay, so let's look at the second rule. So let's say we've got a to the power of 6 divided by, so this is just a fraction, which is the same thing as divided by a to the power of 2. Well, that's the same thing as 6 minus 2, which is, we all know, is 4. So the answer is going to be a to the power of 4. So that is how the first 2 rules that we've looked at can be used, and they're very important. Okay, so let's have a look at 2 more rules. So the next rule is, let's say we've got x to the power of m, and that is to the power of n. So that equals x, sorry, let me just get rid of that. So that equals x, sorry, the drawing's a bit bad as well. So x to the power of m times n, or just mn. So what happens is when you have a power and you raise it to another power, you times the powers together. So you get x to the power of mn. Okay, and then the last thing that you kind of need to know is that, let's say you've got a bracket and then you've got a, which is just representing a number, and you've got ax, which is just representing another number, and that is to the power of n. So what you have to do is you have to take both things inside the brackets to the power of n. So what it will be is, it'll be a to the power of n times x to the power of n. So let's have a look at some questions to do with these so you can understand how they work and why they're so important. So let's have a look at the question. So let's try x to the power of 3 to the power of 3. So all you need to do here is x to the power of 3 times 3, because we're looking at this rule here. And so all you need to do is just times the powers when you have a power to another power. So 3 times 3 is 9. So answer is going to be x to the power of 9. Okay, so let's have a look at another question using the last rule. So we've got a to the power of ax to the power of n is a to the n x to the n. So let's have a look at one. So let's say we've got 2y, let's use a different letter this time, 2y to the power of 4. So you have to do the power of 4 to both things. So 2 to the power of 4, so that's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So that will be 16. So it's going to be 16, and then you have to do y to the power of 4, which is just y to the power of 4. So answer is 16y to the power of 4. So many people will forget that you have to do it to the 2 as well, and that will lose you marks. That will just be wrong. So this is very important. Okay, so there are actually a few more rules that you do need to know. So I'll go over those now. So if you have, let's say you've got x, again, we'll just continue using x to make it simple, and it's to the power of a negative number, so negative n, or let's just do negative, I don't know, negative 1 here. No, yeah, let's just do negative n. So that is the same thing as 1 over x to the power of positive n. So what you're basically doing here is flipping the fraction, because if you remember, x is just the same thing as x over 1. So what you're doing is just flipping the fraction and changing the power at the sign before n. Okay, and these two things are called reciprocals of each other. So you might have heard that word before. So that is an important rule. So let's have a look at an example. Let's say you've got x to the power of negative 3. So that's going to be 1 over x to the power of 3, or x cubed. Okay. Another rule that you might need to know is with fractions. So let's say you've got x to the power of 1 over n. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So this is the same thing as the nth root. So you know how you have square roots and cube roots? So this is the same thing, except that you have the nth root. So whatever's on the bottom of the fraction is what you do the root by. So let's say it's 1/2, so that'll be the square root. If it's 1/3, it'll be the cube root. If it's 1/4, it'll be the 4th root, so on. So let's have a look at an example just to make that clear. So let's say we've got x to the power of 1 over 5. So that's the same thing as the 5th root of x. And while we're looking at all this x stuff, it's not that useful, but when you're getting to normal numbers, you will want to know how. So ordinary numbers, you want to know how to simplify them with fractional powers and all this stuff. So yeah, these rules are all very important. Okay. Another thing to point out with, let's say you have x to the power of m over n. So this fraction, instead of just being 1 on the top, you have m there. So that would be the nth root of x. So that's a bad n, but just not, I'll redo that n because it looks a bit like an A. So you've got the nth root, then that whole thing is raised to the power of m. So that's just like a normal power. So that's just another important thing. So that's not a rule by itself because it's actually already incorporated in all the other rules. But yeah, so that is an important note because that is quite a tricky one sometimes. So now that we've done that, let's have some questions for you to go by. So what I'm going to do is put some questions on the board, and while they're being put on, you can pause the video and give them a go. Okay, so I've just cleared up some space. So I'm going to keep the rules up. Let me just get a box around them. So these are all our important rules. And here are some questions. So we'll have a question for each rule. So question 1, we've got let's say we have a to the power of 3 times a to the power of 6. So if you want to give that one a go, so just pause the video and go through it. Okay, and let's have a look at what we'll do there. So we'll have to do, so if you've not done it yet, just quickly pause the video. So it will be a, then what you do, because it's multiplying, we have to add the powers. So it's going to be 3 plus 6, which is 9. So the answer is a to the 9. Okay, so our second question will be b to the 6 divided by, so you could have it as a fraction or just divided by b. Okay, I've not actually pointed this out, but b is just the same thing as b to the power of 1. So you have a letter, it's just the same thing as to the power of 1. So you might have got confused there when you're trying to solve for this. So if you've not solved it, pause the video and give it a go. Right, so what we'll do is get b to the power of 6 minus 1, because it's divide you minus the powers, and that will just be b to the 5. Okay, if you're interested in knowing why you minus the powers and why you times the powers, and you're not sure why it's working, just ask in the comments and I can make a separate video on that. Okay, so let's look at question 3. So we've got, let's say we've got 2x the power of 3. So just have a go at that one. See how you get on. Right, so you have to, so this is actually both two rules here. It's this rule in the middle, and then it's also the rule below it. So where you have to do it to both of them. So what we're going to do is 2 to the power of 3, which is what, 8. So it's 2 times 2 times 2. Then we've got x to the power of 3, which is just x cubed. So when you don't actually know what x is, you have to just leave it as x cubed. So that's our answer for that one. So let's have a look at question 4. So let's have a go. It is going to be c to the power of negative 9. So just you look at the rules, or if you can remember how to do it, just give that one have a go at that one. How do you think you do that? All right, so what you do is you get 1 over c to the power of positive 9. So you get the reciprocal and change the sign of the power. Okay, let's have a look at question 5. So question 5 is going to be, we've got d to the power of 1 over 3. Okay, you can give that one a go for me. And then once we finish this ones, we'll look at some harder ones, so higher level ones. So this is the same thing as the cube root of d. If you got that, well done. So let's have a look at one last question using these rules. So it's going to be, we've got e to the power of 2 over 3. So how would you write that in a different way? So what you would do is, if you think about it, the number on the bottom of the fraction, so that will be the root. So it's going to be the third root or the cube root of e. Then this whole thing is going to be squared. So make sure you put brackets in this. So this version on the right here is actually less simple than this version on the left. But let's say we knew what e was. So let's say e was 8. So if e was 8, we couldn't just solve it straight away from using 2 over 3. We could solve it though, using this difference on the other side. So the cube root of 8 will be what, 2? Then you square it to get 4, so it'll be 4. So just by looking at 2 over 3, you can't really get it. So that's why it's important to know these rules. Okay, so I'm going to clear this bit on the side. I will leave the rules up still in case you need them. And we're going to look at some extension questions. So these are top level ones. And don't worry if you're confused, you can always ask about any of them in the comments and I'll try to explain it better. Okay, so for this one, we've got 3x squared times 2x in brackets plus 1, and then we've got minus 5x squared, and then in brackets we've got 3x minus 4. So if you want to pause the video and then have a go at this one, just go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to go through it working out. Right, you ready? Okay, so let's have a look at it. So let's have a look on the left. So what we've got here is we've got 3x squared times 2x. And remember that x is just x to the power of 1. So when you're timesing powers, you add them. So what we're going to get is x to the power of 2 plus 1, which is 3. But another important notice, because both these x's have a coefficient, which is a number before it, you have to multiply those together as well. So what you'll get is 2 times 3, which is 6. So what we get from that is 6x cubed. And another important rule is when you're multiplying out brackets, or you should know this by now, that you have to multiply it by everything inside the bracket. So then we're also going to have 1 times 3x squared, which is just 3x squared. Cool. So let's move on to the right bracket. So we've got 5x squared times 3x. Well, that will be, so this is minus 5x squared, sorry. So we've got minus 5 times 3, which is 15. So minus 15. We've got x squared times x. Remember, x is just x to the 1. So you just add the powers because it's timesing. That's our first rule. So we get 15x to the 3. And then finally, we've got negative 5x squared times negative 4. So another important rule is that two negatives cancel out, so that'll become positive. So it'll be plus 20x squared. And all you have to do after that is simplify the terms. So what you can do is you can add the x cubes together. So you get 6x cubed minus 15x squared, sorry, cubed. So what that will give you, these two together, that will give you negative 9x cubed, because remember what you do is you just minus the coefficients. You don't worry about the x cubed bit. And we can also combine these two. So we get 3x squared plus 20x, which is plus 23x squared. So I should have said x squared for the 20x squared, sorry. So that's our answer for this question. Well done if you got it right. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put one last question up. I'm going to remove the rules, so try to do this without the rules. And I'm not going to go through it. I want you to put your answer into the comments and I'll give you a heart if you get it right. So the question is 2x to the 4, okay, times 3x to the 2 divided by x. Okay, so just give that one a go, put your answer into the comments, and yeah, I'll give you a heart if you get it right. So I hope this lesson's been okay. So we've just been going over some GCSE knowledge that you need to know, and that's what it's going to be like for the next few lessons. So the first part of A-level is really just going over GCSE stuff and taking it further. So the next lesson we're going to do expanding brackets, which you should already be familiar with, but it'll just be a nice review to make sure you've not forgotten it. So if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and have a nice day.